So the results are pretty dramatic. There's a $44,000 annual cost prior to the WMS, so 440 errors, $100 per error. There's an $11,000 annual cost after the WMS, so we eliminated 75% of that overall cost, and that gives us a $33,000 savings. So if you're looking at the overall cost of implementing a WMS right from the get-go, just in your shipping operation, you save $33,000, and that's at 100 orders a day. And assuming that you were already running a 98% accuracy, and we've cut that down by 75%, or we've actually gone to something along the 99.5% accuracy, which is where we'd like to be, at that 99 plus percentile range. If you're today at a 90% accuracy, you can imagine the difference in terms of what you'll see here. And use any number that you'd like in terms of the cost of error to see where that gets to. This is a pretty good industry number that we've been able to hold up across a number of years. So we talked about mistakes. Let's talk a little bit about those leaky processes. And if you remember back to Porter's chart in terms of value creation and competitive advantage, he talked about inbound logistics and outbound logistics. So we know what those are. Inbound logistics, the cost of getting products in my door, put away in the right place, and making sure that I'm labeling them, tracking them, all those kind of things right. Because one of the key things about inbound logistics is making sure that I've gotten my products from a dock to stock standpoint in a place where I can fulfill orders as quickly as possible, knowing what I actually have in inventory rather than having things stack up on my dock and not being able to fulfill orders or meet my normal service levels because I literally cannot get product on the shelves fast enough to meet the outbound demand. Outbound logistics, those are the things where we now are taking products off the shelf and we're shipping them out to our customers. And so they fall into the category of all of our shipment planning and execution. Things like task assignment and optimization, all the picking, packing, and shipping we talked about before, making sure that we spend our freight dollars in the most expedient fashion. And so it's really now I'm all about how can I get the right product through the warehouse into a package, onto a pallet, onto a truck, into a parcel courier, however I choose to ship things most expediently through the warehouse with the least errors, because we already looked at the cost of errors a moment ago. So let's take a look now from an inbound and outbound logistics perspective. How can you gain advantage here by looking at those processes and taking any of the potential leaks out of those processes on a regular basis? There's a clear statement from these same studies in terms of where your peers are looking for ways of doing things more effectively. You can see the other alternatives, the other potential things that people have brought up. But the one that highlights for me is the adopt more efficient order fulfillment processes. That drives value in many, many, many ways. One is, if I look at my 3 points, cost, technology, being the most technology literate solution and potentially the most customer intimate solution, more efficient order fulfillment can touch all three of those. It can touch on how I reduce my cost. It can touch on how I use technology most effectively, and it can touch on how I provide the kind of customer service that my customers are not only asking for but demanding of me these days. So let's look at improved efficiencies on the outbound first. Most people spend a lot more time thinking about outbound than they do about inbound. In fact, if you look at where people in the warehouse spend their time, studies would suggest that over 60% of their time from a warehouse person's perspective are dedicated to the outbound process, and they're specifically dedicated to doing nothing but hunting through the warehouse for the product that they have to ship to the customer that you're trying to ship it to. Walking through the warehouse, hunting for the specific product they're looking for, trying to extract products from where they're hidden because they're not necessarily put in a logical place. So automation certainly helps in terms of where those products should be put away. It helps in making sure that the warehouse is slotted most effectively so that disparate products are pulled together to make it easier for you in terms of doing balanced picking and spending as little time traveling and traversing the aisles in a warehouse as humanly possible. Now, on the receiving side, the other side of the equation, Everything about your inventory starts with receiving. If you receive it wrong, then it's wrong forever, because you would, at that point, have to catch something in a physical count or a cycle count to correct it. So if I think I've got 100 on the shelf and I only really got 97 or 98, many bad things happen. There are very few good things that can happen from being inaccurate in the receiving process. So making sure that you receive it right the first time, that it gets put in the appropriate places so that you minimize that traversing the warehouse and labor time, all very important. Customer orders are all about making sure I receive correctly, as crazy as that might sound. If I don't receive it correctly, if I don't minimize that dock-to-stock time, then I'm lowering my customer service metrics, because I'm not getting those orders fulfilled as quickly as I could. Too many SKUs arrive unlabeled, and so there's the whole notion of being able to do labeling on the fly so that I can then take advantage of barcoding, RFID, any other form of auto ID that goes on in the warehouse, all starts at receiving. And the ability to look at things like license plates, if it's appropriate in your particular warehouse, that might have mixed items on a pallet, so that I can receive from an ASN perspective an entire pallet at a time if I chose to, despite the fact that there's disparate product on that pallet. Minimize the receiving time, maximize the accuracy, give me the ability to track that movable unit or that pallet, that license plate on an as-needed basis going forward in time. So let's take a look now at those leaky processes. How, if I tighten those pipes up, I put my duct tape around them, I use my plumber's tape, and I try to patch the holes in my leaky pipes. What can I accomplish? So just a couple again of assumptions. You can run your numbers in here wherever it's appropriate. Let's presume I've got for my company that's doing 100 orders a day on the outbound side, that I've got 6 warehouse people that I'm paying $35,000 each per year. That could be higher, it could be lower, depending upon the labor you got in your warehouse. Make the adjustments accordingly. I'm doing picking from paper pick tickets, so I don't have any form of guided picking. I don't have any form of electronic feedback. So I'm printing off a pick ticket from my accounting system. I'm handing it to my warehouse people, and they are going out and picking the product. They're manually notating what they picked on the physical paper pick ticket, and then at a later point in time, that information is being recorded back into the computer system to generate invoices and to reduce inventory at that time. So when I go to an automated system, what happens? First of all, I eliminate many of the manual steps, so I don't have to print a pick ticket. I don't have to record the results of the picking process at a later point in time, and so I increase the accuracy and the speed, not only of the picking process, but of the information flow. I eliminate the hunting and extracting, so I'm no longer digging in a bin looking for something because I think it might be there. I thought I might have seen it yesterday. Somebody told me they saw that product in that general area of the warehouse. In the past, I know definitively by bin where I've got the product, and my cycle counting and physical counting makes sure it stays that way, and my accuracy is up. So let's say I'm able to increase my efficiency by no more than 15%, which is a relatively conservative number, I believe. If I do that, then I can derive a net $31,500 savings by simply increasing my efficiency by 15% on those orders that I'm fulfilling on a day-to-day basis. So now I've found $33,000 in savings potential just on errors, and I've found $31,500 in savings simply by being able to use my warehouse people more efficiently and allow them to do things that they're unable to do today with their time. All right, let's move on to the next part of our process, which is receiving. So I've got the same receiving assumptions. Now I've got 3 warehouse employees, so total 9 employees. $35,000 each, again, might be high, might be low. Right size it to what you pay for labor in your warehouse. Right size it to the number of people, because you may do more with less. You may do less with more, and we've seen it both ways. This is a decent little rolling average for customers that are in our user base. The receiving is done manually, just as the picking was. So we're receiving from paper purchase orders. We've got some type of a receiving tally sheet that we're receiving off of. We're not consolidating, and we're providing manual feedback. So once again, we've got some type of a receiver, physical hard copy receiver. When the purchase orders arrive, we receive against that receiver manually. We check products off. We count them. We then hand them over to clerical people, and the clerical people post them in the system. So at any given point in time, just think about that from a standpoint of inventory visibility. Our sales team, our customers, anyone else, we may be behind in getting information into the system in terms of receiving, and we may be behind in terms of posting the things that are going out of the system based on the manual processing of pick tickets. So we're never really totally in sync from a real-time basis in terms of what's in inventory, what we know, what we can promise to customers based on availability of the goods in our warehouse. So the results here, not quite as dramatic as picking, but dramatic nonetheless. And there's a couple areas where you really have a hard time quantifying. First of all, same scenario as the picking side. We're eliminating all the manual steps. We're increasing accuracy and speed because we're doing things with a barcode reader or a handheld computer rather than on paper and pencil and then manually keying it back in. It allows for consolidated receiving. So depending upon how the goods come to you, if they come to you in containers, or they come to you on pallets or mixed pallets, then the efficiency we gain will be greater than 10%, because instead of scanning eaches or scanning cartons, we can scan pallets and or containers at one fell swoop and increase the overall performance and rapidity with which we get the receiving process done. But again, we're going to be conservative, and we're going to say that we're going to increase in efficiency by 10%, and so we're going to gain 10% of that overall. 3 people times $35,000, $105,000, 10% of that, $10,500 savings, because we can then allocate those people to something else. Or we potentially, because we're now up to over $40,000, we cut the 9 people back to 8 if that's what we chose to do. Now let's look at the next step in that process thing. We're going to find a way to reduce stock waste. If you think about it, when you don't have an accurate inventory and you don't have a good way of handling returned goods, the average distribution, manufacturing, retail company is going to probably carry more inventory than they need, or they're going to write off more inventory than they'd like to. So if you look at your balance sheet at the end of the year and you look at your turns and you look at your write-offs, if the turns are not as good as you'd like or the write-offs are higher than you'd like, then that would suggest that my thesis here could be accurate in your company. Now, what happens from that? You have a lack of confidence. You know, you're not sure about the numbers. When people go out to a bin, they find different things than they expected. You're constantly having to do cycle counting manually. You're constantly having to consider doing a physical inventory, probably for your bankers, because you've got low confidence in your inventory balances. And it means that you probably are carrying too much because you're generating a high safety stock policy to make sure that I never run out of the key items that my customers are expecting from me. Poor handling of return goods. Some of our customers, their entire profit for a year is tied up on how well or how poorly they handle return to vendor.